Strategy's intact. I mean, the same plan we declared in January is the same plan now. So really trying to working to build from this huge foundation that we've created, this massive, ad-supported radio product, and expand it into new sort of features, new sets. So yeah, it's intact.
We've reported that Pandora had explored a sale earlier this year. Is that off the table?
You don't. If you want to sell a company, you don't hire a CEO and invest like we are in our strategy. So no, it's full steam ahead. And again, I mean, we've spent 10 years building sort of the underpinnings of a really big business. So that's where we're headed.
Now, in the quarter, active listeners ticked up, but still not a huge increase. What's it going to take to drive that growth even faster?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. I mean, we have 100 million people that come to Pandora every 3 months and about 80 million every month. So right there is another 25% pool that the first task is how do you make those quarterly listeners monthly listeners and then make them more daily listeners? And there's a big catalyst to that is sort of CE and auto, so making Pandora more of a habit in more places. And then looking ahead to later this year, we're going to start rolling out sort of a more expansive feature set. We've talked about kind of more on demand, more interactivity. That I think will allow us to provide for someone all the things they want in music in one spot. Because I think we leak listeners because they hear a song they love on Pandora and they want to rewind it and they can't, so they go someplace else. We want to keep them on Pandora. And I think last but not least, we're going to add and weave in live events, and that will sort of add to the sort of completeness of the experience and just kind of be your one-stop shop for music.
Now, there's this great stat. Millennials spend more time on Pandora than YouTube.
Yes.
Still, the stock has dropped more than 40% over the last year. Why? What is it that investors aren't getting?
I think there's a lot of misperception about the company, and that's obviously my job is really to make sure that story is clear. And I think it's probably because a lot of our strengths are not immediately visible. So start with personalization. We have the engine that drives our song selection that creates this personal radio it's a fantastically hard problem. And even as we've had a lot of competition and a lot of sort of free alternatives, free on-demand alternatives, our per listener per hour or per month listening has continued to increase. I think that's a reflection of this massive investment we've made in personalization. Second thing is monetization. So we monetize our product pretty close to the way broadcast radio does on 1/5 of the ad load. Those are two huge strategic pillars for us, and I don't think they're yet well understood actually. So we'll be telling that story, and I think we're going to show it, connect the dots in the coming months.
What are your plans for an on-demand product where listeners would choose what they hear next rather than just waiting for what comes up? How close are you to having what you need in place for that on-demand platform?
Yeah, so we know how we're going to approach that. The RDO acquisition brought in some great talent and some great technology to really accelerate it. And the way we think about it is, this is not going to be a Me Too service. The sort of 30 million songs in a search box approach is not how we're going to come to this. We have 100 million people that come to Pandora in over 23 hours a month. We know a ton about them. We know what songs you like, the stations you're creating. So we have all this great sort of precise information about your preferences. So we can bring you into this interactive environment in a contextually relevant way. So take you in with the music we already know, create playlists, pre-populate your experience. So solving that problem that you'd otherwise face, walking into this record store where you can have everything, what do you do? Well, Pandora can solve that for you. So I think it's going to be like version 2 of On Demand.
Are the labels asking for the same rate that they give Spotify, 70%? And would you pay that to them?
I expect that we'll be in the same ballpark as other services. We have a slightly different approach to this because we're really hoping that labels will look sort of to be more flexible on how the products can come to market. So I think one of the great opportunities Pandora has is to address this huge tens of millions of listeners who are not the $10 a month subscribers and haven't really thought about it, to introduce them to premium services, to upsell essentially this kind of big fat middle of listeners into higher ARPU products. So if we have some flexibility there, I think we can really expand the industry.